You are watching Omnis Protocol, and this is a list focus episode. I am Charles, also known as Omnis, and I'm here with the purest LVO champion that there has ever been, Chris. Thank you so much for doing another list focus with me.
Happy to be here.
All right. So you and I have both dug into Veers a little bit as of recent, and so I felt like you'd be the perfect person to talk about this list with me. So this one is my list. I mean, it's my list in the sense that, like, I chose this version not in the sense that I don't think anyone has ever played this combination of models before, because I'm sure that somebody has. I think there is a natural evolution of, you like Veers, you're probably going to try something like this. But the list is Veers with Stormtrooper Sergeant and the ISF, and then it has Moff Gideon with Deathtrooper Escort and with Deathtroopers. So, Chris, when you see this list, what's the first question that comes to your mind? Is there anything that you feel like I should immediately answer?
The first question that comes to my mind is Imperial Special Forces, but that's not a Stormtrooper, right?
Yes, they are not. It would be great if they were. But I would say that ISF are one of the non-replaceable parts of this list. Like, where the power of this list comes from is that you win priority, right? Veers gets to put something into reserve right away. You reserve the Death Trooper Escort, and the ISF already start up within a dash range of the midline objectives. So you choose something like shifting priorities as your mission. And so guaranteed first turn, you start off controlling 4 points because you activate the Death Trooper Escort out of reserve. He immediately moves both of the ISF onto midline objectives, and then he takes a third. And in this case, it would actually be a fourth objective because you would still be controlling all of the backline in shifting. So you just start off with this really strong starting place, and then everything else is just like, how can I do good work from there? That's kind of the starting concept.
Okay.
Are there any other choices in this list that surprise you?
I actually love all the parts of this list. So no, I mean, like, Death Troopers are fantastic in melee. Moff kind of does some really cool things with that. So I'm pretty excited to hear more about this. I do have a question, I think, though,
Sure.
and it's whether or not, because I think the most exciting part about Veers, for me at least, is that reserve mechanic thing at the start of the game that you were talking about. Is that flexible? Is that something where you could look at the map and say, oh, maybe I do this instead? Or is it kind of always for you like a DTE?
I mean, I'm not sure I've played it enough to say, like, really definitively. I do think you flex when you go second, right? I think there are situations where you don't actually reserve the DTE if you're actually playing from the non-priority position. And there you need to be ready to be flexible, adapt to the table, adapt to the mission. I mean, it's still probably a safe bet, though, because in a lot of situations, right, if you get an X shape on either first contact or on Never Tell, you have the ability to put 3 models. Like, first activation, you guarantee you have 3 models, and you probably shove someone else off of it. That's a big deal. You know that you can put pressure on both sides. I do think there's a world where you don't always activate the DTE from reserve, depending on what ends up on, like, what side of the board, like what they take. Like, say you're playing Sabotage and they immediately put 2 models opposite of DTE, or they put 2 models opposite the ISF, and you go like, well, just moving 2 ISF onto the point doesn't do anything really besides present targets. So there you might go, maybe I take someone else, because if you could have, like, Stormtrooper Sergeant, move them on, and then he also gets on the point, stuff like that. So I think you get more flexible when you're playing from the non-priority position. But I think I would play this where I'm playing a scripted play from the get-go.
Makes sense.
I will say, I think Gideon is probably the most flexible spot in this list. I think he could be Iden. I think he could be Mando. I think his presence in this is just a solid option where the anti-reserve mechanic messes with, you make other people less likely to be hitting the perfect activation, and you are in a lot of ways controlling having a really optimal activation. I think you could also maybe change the Deathtroopers. I think they help out Veers and the Stormtrooper Sergeant by giving them access to supporting fire dash.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I could see the argument that you want something else in that slot, and I don't think it's required. I will say I split them up. What I really would have loved to have the Deathtroopers on the Veers side. The problem I found with that is that 1/3 of the time when I won priority, I would end up with Deathtrooper Escort and ISF activating, and they're leaving the objective that's active. And so I'm only scoring 3, and I'm not scoring 1, and none of my other activations get me control of that point. Nothing moves Veers, nothing moves Gideon. So I'm giving up pressure on the middle later on, and that felt like too much of a detriment. And I did end up finding that a lot of the time Veers, with his ability to just dash a Stormtrooper, I felt like he almost always gets the Deathtrooper into his position where he can have the supporting fire dash if he wants it. And so I didn't feel like having them directly in front of him ended up feeling essential.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Overall, I like the list. And I think it's primarily like a put pressure on like a Cassian list. It's something where like, I'm just going to try to like win the first struggle as fast as possible with minimal things on the midline, take advantage of this meta where less things are running super heavy movement, where they're relying on these just like consistent activations, and just be like, I'm going to play so fast that you don't get time to just get your packages all up and cause enough problems before I win. But I think you also give up struggle 2. I think you just give it up. You're just like, I want to end this game fast. I don't want to have my characters on points, taking this town is ready to blow, and move on. But I will say, kind of like when we were talking about your Asajj and Dooku list, I don't like playing this into super aggressive things. I would not want to play this into Boss Hunter, for instance. I think it's just not durable enough, and it would get destroyed. And so I would definitely want the other side of my list to be something different. Do you agree that this, because you've played Veers a bit too, do you feel, I mean, hanging with Cassian is a weird conversation, right? Because nothing has a winning record against Cassian at the moment. Absolutely nothing. But I feel like I could play this against Cassian and have a winning record. I'm not saying it's a great winning record. Might be 55-45, but that's better than what most things get against Cassian. Anything else jump out at you where you're like, I think this list could struggle with this, or I think it'd be really useful in this particular matchup? Anything like that jump out to you?
I completely agree that you're going to probably struggle versus some very heavy aggression. But if you happen to have the matchups that you can take a little bit slower, or if you can get the right mission against something like a Republic, like a very push heavy Republic, I could see this doing really well by just saying we're going to put on like a really aggressive scoring pressure on them while they're just unable to recover from struggle 1. I completely love your idea of just giving up struggle 2 and saying, cool, I'm going to get into struggle 3 now, where I'm probably have the ability to choose a map site again. I assume you don't play sabotage with this?
No, I mean, I think there's no reason not to play shifting. I think shifting is the best mission for it. And I mean, I'd almost to a certain extent, like, I would be feeling pretty reasonably good playing this even on shifting without priority. But some of the other missions get a little bit more complicated when you don't have priority.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that case, I definitely think that if you're going in and saying, all right, I'm going to blitz struggle 1, give up struggle 2, and then be back to gas on the pedal for struggle 3, where I get to choose the layout. That's a great plan.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we could probably argue that maybe sabotage causes some issues, because I still think you want to blitz struggle 1. I think you are going all out trying to win struggle 1. I don't feel like this list lasts in a really long game, right? Like the more activations goes, I just don't feel like the average durability of this holds up over an extended game. It reminds me very much of a red deck from Magic the Gathering. Like there's a certain point where if you haven't won, you're probably not going to. But I do think when played well, it could hang when you're playing it aggressively and you know you're making very aggressive plays. I also want to say, I don't think this is a very forgiving list. I don't know if that's what your experience was practicing with Veers. If you mess things up and you use like coordinated offensive when you wanted to use supporting fire dash, and then you're like, oh shit. You know, it's a list where you're like, oh, like there is not a lot of give. Every point is really important and you want to be maximizing that potential. So you don't want to be slipping up on those things. And you really want to be making sure you utilize, like, how do you get the characters to the right point? Like the video that I have of playing the Gideon version, I saw an option to score more points while I was doing commentary, where I was like, there was a better play with Gideon here that I didn't even see. And so it's not the easiest to play. Was that your experience testing out Veers as well?
So I'm smiling because absolutely, I was playing there's been a lot of chatter today or recently in Discord about Stormtroopers. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go play some more Storm. So I went and played Veers earlier today. And a couple turns into the game said, hey, I made some terrible mistakes. Can we reset? So yes, absolutely. You can just, you need to see the right order, the right abilities, the right things to take, the right tree branches, because you can just say, I'm going to do this ability. Wait, I should have done that other one instead. And then that can brick your whole game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very delicate one when you're like, choosing where you deploy stuff, choosing which side of the table that you want. Like, I really don't think there's any aspect of the game that you can skip with this list. It's also a list where you really got to know, like, when you want to hunker and when you want to shoot. Like, every facet of the game, I think, comes to play in this, and you really want to be good at all of it. So I do think it's a really good list just to, like, improve your general skill at the game. I will say, my overall feelings on, I'm forgetting what the name, I want to say maximum firepower, but that is not the name of the ability, but his like blow up an objective.
For Veers, we are the Storm.
Yes, we are the Storm. That has proven to feel a lot less useful than I thought it would. Every time I'm doing it, I'm like, giving my opponent a dash is so bad. I can't plan for every possible dash that they get. And so, be very careful with that ability, because that ability can absolutely just lose you a game.
And I was helping a friend learn how to play the game too with this, and he kind of had moments where he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do this," and I was like, "Whoa, hold on, that's not going to do what you think it's going to do."
Yeah. I will also say, this list has a little bit more healing than most Imperial lists do. So utilize it. If you regularly play Empire, you're probably not used to having heals on your tree. I think this is Vader's fault. This list has a decent amount of heals, and you want to survive. You want to, like, get yourself over that hump. So a lot of time, look for the ways that you can be resolving shoves to get you into range, to get the heals. And you're like, if you're like, I'm not getting to the objective either way with my one advance, can I advance and be within range 2 of a model that I can then heal with my attacks, and then supporting fire dash onto the point, stuff like that. Like, look for those sort of things. And so, yeah, I definitely think all of that kind of stacks in. Like, don't forget any part of this list. It's not I don't think it's an overpowering list. Do you have any other insight from your testing out Veers that you think is essential for, like, making a list like this work?
This list has a lot of conditions that it can stack on you. So utilizing those conditions to get the most out of your team is very important. So sometimes that's going to look like going down 3 levels of planning just to make that identity for Veers do some damage, or, something else. Like, you do definitely have to sit there and plan out how you're going to condition stack, where you're going to condition stack, and then outmaneuver your opponent.
Yeah, 100%. Like we said, this is a list that I think works potentially into Cassian, and you want to look for things where you can, like, leave characters pinned you're like, so they're thinking they get to Cassian trigger, where you're like, I can get this wound safely now because the only guy who could get to an objective is pinned, or they have 2 health left and they're strained. Look for those situations. You definitely have to be cognizant of when to take a wound. This is not a free-for-all list by any means.
100%. Like, in fact, there's probably times where you really shouldn't be taking wounds with this. Like, many times, in fact, where you're like, but I want to take the wound. No, you're going to have to reprogram your brain a little bit and leave them damaged and conditioned.
Yeah, for an Imperial, considering this is not like a Jedi focus list and this is an Imperial list, you gotta have a lot of delayed gratification and patience and wisdom. It feels much more control-y, and you like really got to make a lot of micro decisions that lead to an overall win. And there can be just a couple of small micro decisions that backfire on you. But overall, do you have a pick with this of like what you would add to it? Like if you were going to bring this to a tournament, do you think this is something where you still go with something very offensive? Or do you think you go with something maybe like super revenge? Like what would be your pairing here?
Such a good question. I would have to determine what I really want to play this against. And I think that would probably be something like a Cassian list. I would take this against, some stuff like that.
Well, not just Cassian. I think I would probably like there's been a lot of like all Rebel premieres of late that are like I guess they're Cassian anchors at their core, right?
A Rebels list.
So yeah, but like the full Rebel package, I think I could hang with this against the full Rebel concept.
Yeah. So this kind of does lack a little bit of firepower, though, when you really need to punch through something. Yeah. So kind of like the list that we talked about before with Asajj Dooku, I almost feel like this is the natural pairing that you do pretty well with here is something that has a lot of firepower.
Yeah, definitely one of the things that was crossing my mind was like Vader 1 Ki-Adi-Mundi. Something where I know that I can punch through, where I can be very flexible. Because I do think it could potentially have issues with Obi, where it might stall out. If Obi can get a strong enough position that it could stall out against it and then just slowly lose the longer game, could certainly be an issue. So I think also having something where I'd be comfortable playing into Obi, so a mix of force pushing and aggression, is definitely solid. If I were to build a revenge list for it, I think I would not want it to be just a shovey revenge list, right? Like sometimes if you play like Leia Cassian, you just don't have enough force pushes. I think you could potentially also struggle with Obi. And so I would like something, maybe if you're going to play a Cassian list with it, you do Cassian Kanan or Cassian Mando. But I also think some sort of like Mando variation could be really interesting, where you like lean into revenge, durability, and force push and kind of stack some of those things together. So
yeah, I can see that.
All right. Well, another list for everyone to try out. I strongly suggest trying it. I do firmly believe in this list, and I am not blowing smoke. I try lists all the time and end up not liking them, but this one I think genuinely has game. And do we get an LVO champion stamp of approval over here?
I would play this. I don't know that means, yeah. Look, at your own risk, play the list that you and I would play on this.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, Christopher, thank you so much for talking lists with me again. You are absolutely wonderful and always a pleasure to chat with you. I need to visit Arizona.
You do.
Yes. All right. We'll close it out there. The most OP thing that you can do is try out Veers. He is not as bad as his Longshanks record makes him seem. Later, nerds.